Hey, it's Rachel, and I mentioned in my last video that I was also going to do an update on the wood chips that are here. And so that's going to be the focus of this one, how we got them for free and how we're using them to create compost for our fall garden, which we're going to put in late summer. So this is all free. We got the wood chips from a service called Chip Drop, and you sign up online, you ask an arborist to come to your house and drop off the chips after they have taken down a tree. They do it on their schedule. So I'll give you like the good and the bad about this. First, we love it, highly recommend it. The good is you get, again, free wood chips. You get a lot of them. And second is you get the whole tree. So it's not just like regularly sized, all same pieces of bark. And if you've watched the Back to Eden movie, which I do recommend, it's a really interesting approach to gardening. It's essentially gardening in a deep layer of wood chips and essentially putting your plants into the compost that develops on the bottom of that pile of wood chips. And for that to work, you need to have all of these smaller pieces of wood. So you need those fine pieces that'll settle to the bottom. If all you had was like bark you went out and bought at the store, it would just be too big and it would take a long time. There wouldn't be enough surface area for this kind of composting reaction to get going. The other nice thing about getting a whole tree is that it comes with leaves kind of shredded up in it. You get pine needles. And so again, it's not just pure carbon, you're getting a little bit of nitrogen in there too. So we found that it was really, really good for the composting. Now, the bad news, so to speak, about Chip Drop is it's just on the schedule of the arborist, right? That's why it's free. If they happen to be in your area with a load of wood chips, they will drop it off. They did a great job of putting it in our driveway in a convenient place. So even though we didn't know it was coming, it actually was okay that we suddenly had this huge pile of wood chips. But it also meant that we then had these wood chips there right before it started raining for, I think, 2 or 3 days straight. And that wood chip pile got really, really wet. So when we put these down, we had two purposes. One is just, if you could tell from our earlier videos, this used to be a big muddy mess. It was very, very wet. It was really unpleasant to work in. And we knew long-term we were gonna put in some pathways just to make that better. When we found out about Chip Drop, we decided that we would also use this as a source for compost. So what's happening right now beneath me is that these wood chips are in direct contact with the dirt, and that was important. We wanted to not put a layer in between. It's also why you can see over at the edge here why there's grass coming up, right? Because we didn't put down anything to kill the grass. And I'll talk that through for a second here. So we really wanted to have direct contact with the soil and the mud for two reasons. We wanted the water to wick up and help activate that compost pile that's happening beneath our feet. We also wanted all of the microherds and the bacteria and the good fungal, mycorrhizae going through there to get up and populate this wood chip pile and really get the compost process started. And that meant direct soil contact. Because the wood chips got dropped off, at random, not on our schedule, and then that happened right before a heavy rain, I didn't do what I would have liked to have done, which would have been to put down silage tarp in the place that these wood chips were going to go and let the grass underneath completely die off, because that would have meant leaving it in place for at least 2 weeks, ideally more like 3. And we just didn't want to leave the wood chips sitting that long. They were already starting to compost, which you'll see in a second when we show some close-ups of that. As we were taking the things out of the pile, there's like steam coming out. And it was obvious we needed to kind of get them out of there before it turned into a really hot compost pile just right there in the driveway. So you'll see, I think in the rest of the videos throughout this whole summer, I'm probably gonna have these little patches of grass coming up everywhere, and we just decided to live with it. But I would say if you were gonna do this yourselves, it's probably worth putting down a silage tarp kind of right off the bat, or something else that you can use to, a kiddie pool works, anything to kill the grass, so that when you do get your wood chips, if you want to replicate this, you don't have the same grass issues that we do, but we're just managing it. So this is what a delivery of Chip Drop wood looks like. Again, lots of various sizes. It's a huge pile of wood. You can see this one was still really damp in the middle. And I mean, this is after 2 to 3 days of rain, so it had settled quite a bit. This started at like adult chest height. Serious pile of wood chips. And then a close-up shot here. You can see the steam coming out as Winston is shoveling this. There was already a really nice, thermophilic compost process happening with these wood chips, which was really good to see. Now, for composting with Back to Eden, it's really just with wood chips. We wanted to kind of speed this up and get a higher quality compost. And so we added grass clippings, as you can see here. And for carbon nitrogen ratio in a good compost pile, you want roughly 30 parts carbon to 1 part nitrogen. But because the actual materials, the carbon ones are really high percentage carbon, the nitrogen ones are a mixture of different elements. They still have carbon in them as well. So you don't put in 30 parts wood to like 1 part grass clippings. What you want to do in a compost pile generally is 2 parts green to 1 part brown. And in our case, the brown is the chip drop wood chips, and the green was bags of grass clippings that we had taken out of the yard, before it had started raining. And so we would layer in wood, layer in a lot of grass, put in a little bit more wood, and then we would come back and layer in, even more large handfuls of grass. And so, we tried to mix them a little bit by hand, but I'll show you in a sec. We did a second mixing as we installed it. We would then unceremoniously dump it right on the mud. You can see here the grass is already kind of starting to die, and so it wasn't necessary to put a super thick layer down, but we wanted a nice level that we could walk on and that the water wouldn't seep up through it. So it's still pretty thick here. And I would go through, as I mentioned, and turn it. So I used a pitchfork, very gently flipping this over. And my goal really is to break up the grass clippings. Those had already been sitting in the bags for a couple days, and they have a tendency to form these clumps. We knew that if we didn't get them broken up and mixed in with the wood chips, there's a good potential that they would go anaerobic, especially with this much water coming up from underneath. So we really did want to make sure we broke that up. So you can kind of see me gently trying to do that here. I also really focused on piling a really thick layer right up next to the edge of the bed. Winston weed whacked it first to get down the grass, and then I piled up a really thick layer. And I made a point after that of walking through here and just stomping it down right against the bed to just, again, really try and kill the grass. We knew that's going to be an area where the grass has a tendency to come up. So the more I could help prevent that, the better. Plus, it's just kind of fun. This is like, stomping grapes in Italy, except less glamorous. And then here in the middle walkway, we kept going. Here, the grass is a much more formidable opponent. For one, we couldn't weed whack because of the trellises. And for another, it just was in better, healthier shape. So this is a really thick layer in here. Again, I'm still trying to break up these grass clumps as I go. But I also made a big, big point of doing a thick layer, especially right around the beds. And I don't show it as well here, but I went back through later and tried to kind of tuck the grass up underneath the wood chips and really press it down and try and kill it. And here's a time lapse of, kind of the end part of this process, just to show this is a lot of work, not going to lie, but it was kind of fun for one. And for another, we're going to be amply rewarded in the fall with a really nice compost layer. And this is the not pretty layer, right? This is a bunch of grass mixed with wood. And you'll see in a sec when I do a walk around that, it's not a very attractive finished product. So we did cover it later with just pure wood chips. But this is a really nice compost layer. It helps to kill the grass, and it's a nice mixture of carbon and nitrogen for composting purposes. Here is the first layer. We tried to concentrate the grass clipping and wood chip mixture close to the beds. So you can kind of see the grass all intermixed through here. Makes a big difference as far as walking on this. Already much, much more pleasant than slogging through this stuff. And we're going to go back through now and put just plain wood chips on top. So this is the finished product. We put the compost wood mixtures inside the beds as well, and then a top layer of wood all around the exterior. Much nicer to walk on, really pretty, good finished product. And so I said at the beginning that one of the nice things about Chip Drop, and by the way, this isn't sponsored, I just really liked it. So this is a completely free advertisement for them, I guess. But what I really liked about Chip Drop was you got a lot of wood chips, right? And so even after we did one entire layer through here of half grass and half wood chips, and an entire thick layer of just wood chips, so we were like a foot at least deep, which is starting to settle as we walk on it. We still had a ton of wood chips left over, and so we were trying to decide what to do with it. And there is a kind of an unused planting bed near the house on the east side, and we decided that that would be a nice place to put in some shrubs and some perennials. And so on the fly, we grabbed the cardboard that we had available. We laid it down to kill the grass that was there. Again, just like this one, it's not a perfect solution, but we'll just kind of keep at it until we eradicate the grass. And then we just dumped all of our wood chips on top of that. And I wouldn't plant right into that, right? There's no nitrogen in it, unlike this one where we put the grass in. That perennial bed you'll see in a second is just pure wood chips. But the good news is I'm not going to be able to plant those kinds of shrubs until the fall anyway. So it's going to have a long time to compost in place and break down and start getting kind of richer with nutrition and life before we put those shrubs in. So let me just, for the last part of this video, I'll walk you through how we did that, and you can see the process from start to finish on that perennial bed. So here's the perennial bed process, and if it had not just rained for 2 to 3 days, or if I was planting straight into this, we would have wetted down this cardboard, gotten it nice and damp. As it is, we just laid it on the grass. Kind of see on the left here, I tried to tuck the grass up underneath the cardboard as we went, and then we just took loads of wood chips, and yeah, that's a snow shovel. We had a lot of wood to move, and just dropped it right on top of the cardboard, again in a really thick layer. And you can see the finished product here. Pretty happy with it. So this whole thing for us was a massive success. We definitely love Chip Drop. I will be using it again. Again, totally free service, and out of that we got weed control. We have, not perfect grass control, but a lot of grass control. And then we're going to get a ton of compost out of this by the end of the summer. And when I do our video, I'll do a video in the future when we turn this over into fall crops. And when I do that, you can we'll give an update on how the composting worked. But just the fact that it was composting in the driveway without even having nitrogen in it is a good sign. So we're expecting good compost from this. And then we got a whole perennial bed out of it as well. So lots and lots of function and utility from a free delivery. So we really, really like it. And frankly, it's also just a ton more fun to work in the garden right now because I'm not up to my elbows and knees and waist in mud every day. So all around, big win. And I'll let you guys know if there's more updates coming. I think we're going to do a few more on things like pruning and harvesting. I will definitely talk through how we're going to transition into, out of some of these spring crops that have kind of gotten towards the end of their life and into the fall ones. And so stay tuned, subscribe if you want to get those. And yeah, check us out. Hope this was helpful. Thanks.